Hello my lovelies and welcome to the Super NPC Reviews. Are you ready to put on the costume and don the cape? Well, the power and responsibility is yours in today's RPG, Metroville. As an NPC, I have powers and abilities dictated by the needs of the story. It's not. In Metroville, you play a superhero. What kind? Any kind, except Spider-Man, because he's
a public menace.
But more on that later. More specifically, Metroville is a dice pool system using d6s. A dice pool is made using your rating in an attribute plus the rating of any relevant superpowers, talents, which are essentially skills, or applicable traits, which are minor powers or abilities. Roll, and anything higher than a 4 is a success, with you trying to get a number of successes equal to a target number. Bigger is better, especially when it comes to character advancement. I guess technically it's a D2 system, but that's a minute detail that only a nerd would care about. Most indie games tend to be light when it comes to mechanics, and superhero games go for either far end of the spectrum. So for the crunchiness of Metroville, I must admit my own preconceptions got me there in the beginning. It's an indie title that sells itself on using powers creatively to solve problems, and it uses d6s as its only die type. So I kept expecting it to be a fairly light system, but however, it turns out it's more granular than expected, especially when it comes to traits and conditions. Traits having a point by nature to them, and conditions being detailed in their effects. Overall, I get the impression that Metroville was aiming to be firmly middle of the spectrum, but kind of overshot, or undershot depending on how you view it, and came out firmly crunchy of center. All of this is neither good nor bad, just that one should mind their biases when reading. But you want to know about the superpowers, because why else would you be looking at a superhero game? 30 powers are listed, ranging from duplication to super strength and alter reality to teleportation. Their ranks span from 1 to 7, with particular milestone growth at ranks 4 and 7. Considering that superpowers have the specifically highest stated rate and the details that go into their progression, it's fair to say that they are the core of the game. As for characters, start out with a 2 in each attribute, representing human average, with 6 points to spread around, with a max starting value of 5, which can be modified by your origin. Origin is the source of your powers. It ranges from genetically enhanced to high-tech to training and more. Though origins dictate where your powers come from, they don't dictate what powers you get, for the most part. Some origins lend themselves more towards one kind of power than others. For example, magic lends itself more towards mental powers than physical. Origins also set how many superpowers, minor powers, or traits characters start with. Essentially, origins are ancestry and character class rolled together, which then proceeds into freeform character creation. Alright, supercomputer, which quick build shall we do today?
Professor Nightcrawler.
No, like Spider-Man,
He's a menace to the entire city!
Alright, the supercomputer says to start with the training origin, and from there to spread the attribute points evenly across all 5. After that, let's take the 3 attribute points from training and add 1 to agility, mind, and charisma. A smart, evasive sort who's good at dealing with people. After that, they get 1 rank in the general talents of solving crimes, drive a car, and understanding human nature, with 1 rank in the unique talents of escape bonds and stealth. If that seems low, bear in mind that talents rank from 1 to 3. I'm starting to sense something here though. Does this character have the traits of athletic, allowing them to keep going, martial arts because they've trained in most if not all styles of unarmed combat, and wealthy to explain how they can do all that without holding down a day job? It's Batman, isn't it?
I am Batman!
What are his negative traits though? Let's see. Mental illness. That sounds about right. No matter the iteration, he has something going on in his head. Be it paranoia, PTSD, or OCD. Yeah, you know me. Unfortunately, there aren't really any other negative traits that really work for Batman. So even as a starter Caped Crusader, he would start off a bit stronger than other characters if we really wanted that Dark Knight flavor. This is reflective of a larger foible in the Metroville system, which we'll get into in a little bit. Now I know what you're thinking. What about his belt and gadgets? Well, that can be covered by 1 rank in the superpower of inventions, which allows our starter Batsy to have the various bits and bobs he needs to defend the innocent. So take all that together and you have Batman, at the start of his career as Gotham's Guardian. The Metroville system is flexible enough to play most any kind of superhero, and with a GM willing to put in the forethought, get most of the other kinds of characters you might want as well.
The
The city of Townsville is under attack!
And that's pretty much it. You can do anything you want with Metroville. You can play 4-color Golden Age shenanigans to dark, edgy deconstructions reminiscent of Alan Moore in the Dark Age, or something a bit more grounded in between. Tone, themes, etc. are all adjustable to your whim. The sky's the limit. This is due in large part to the broad scope nature of the powers and the fact that there is no setting. You might think this means that the game is more of a toolbox then. There isn't any advice or tools when it comes to running a superhero game. Admittedly, comics and comics-derived properties have become a mainstay of the media landscape, so most folks have an idea of what goes on in superhero stories, but the lack of setting or tools for creating superhero stories does mean more work on part of the GM. Basically, your mileage may vary on how much this is a hindrance for you. This is not to say there is nothing to help the GM get going. There is an enemy section to draw friends and foes from, and Metroville does give advice on running a session as well as the what, where, and why of getting your story started. Additionally, there is a small number of prompts and story starters to help people get going. Some notable examples being a superpowered soldier's arm race between nations, to the heroes were here a decade ago but disappeared and now someone or something is invading, from superhero high school to my particular favorite where you have to ask yourself,
are you a good witch or a bad witch?
Where superpowered people are witches. Recently some bad witches have been causing trouble, and now the good witches have to figure out what's going on before things get messier. Yes? As for some things to be aware of, the biggest foible this system has is the lack of power level guidelines. A lot of superhero games give a short rundown of the different levels of power you see in comics, from street level up to cosmic, and where characters in their system fit into those levels. Additionally, Metroville's character advancement operates on a system. You have to exercise a power or attribute to advance it, and it mostly applies to that power or attribute. There is an option to take advancement points and spend them to get powers of the opposite type, mental v physical, but there's a conversion rate. All this together means making more experienced characters is tricky and requires some eyeballing from the GM. So playing or making characters directly inspired by more known comic figures is harder than some might be interested in pursuing. In a hypothetical second edition, there are some quality of life tweaks I would make, two of which would be allowing some powers to count as both physical and mental, or allowing the GM to determine which are which. As it stands, there are far more mental than physical powers, and I can see reasonable arguments for some of those listed as mental to be physical. For example, shapeshifting. This division can unduly force characters out of their desired roles or hinder them, especially with that conversion rate between powers. Not everyone wants to play a genius in order to turn into animals. On a superpower side note though, the super speed power is actually manageable. Super fast movement is always tricky to balance in RPGs, so good on Metroville there. The other big tweak would be to phase out minor powers. There's all of 5 minor powers listed, taking up a single page. If it were me, I would expand some into full powers or move them over into the traits section. All in all, this little bit takes up space and could have been tightened up. The other big thing in Metroville's favor is its reskinability. The lack of setting, the multitude of origins, and the broad depth of powers and traits allows it to cover a wide range of more action-oriented type settings. But even then, the focus on creative problem solving does allow for additional types of stories as well. You've seen the My Hero Academia footage, so if you hadn't guessed, Metroville can handle shonen stuff rather well. No, because like Spider-Man and Nightcrawler, she's... I can't. She's not a menace or a criminal. It's Asui. How can you say no to that?
Ribbit.
If this game's powers have one glaring hole, it's a lack of wall crawling ability. There's a whole section of characters that can do that, and in some cases it's a signature part of their power set. To fill this gap, you'd have to slot it into either a trait or minor power. I checked with the creator about this hole, and they said that the playtesters didn't think it was super enough. Yeah, that was my reaction too. Anyway, just tweak the talent list. Not hard since all of them are short and self-descriptive in name. Then just curate the list of powers and the origins to fit the setting. Not really. As mentioned previously, origins determine where you got your powers and the starting amount of powers, traits, etc., but not the powers you get. Also, even if all powers and setting come from the same source, that doesn't mean there isn't variation to be had. For example, in My Hero Academia, all powers come from the same source, quirks, or rather, being genetically enhanced. But remember, not all quirks are created equal. Some supplement their naturally weak or subtle quirks with training or tech, thus bringing in the training and high-tech origins respectively. Additionally, there are those in setting who experiment trying to get more out of quirks, introducing the experiment or accident origin. The flexibility of the system and a little forethought opens up a lot of possibilities is what I'm saying. Metroville is a rough but solid game that is surprisingly pliable. If you're looking for some superhero action that is crunchy but not too crunchy, this game might be what you're looking for. Also, at one book that only uses D6s, it's really easy to get into. So, have fun saving the day, and until next time, fare thee well, my lovelies!